One of the most common attributes of megalithic structures, be they in Europe or all the way to Asia, and I've seen it numerous times over and over again, is the proliferation of quartz, or the incorporation of quartz into the stones of the megalith. Yet this seems to be almost overlooked. It's almost as a byproduct of the aesthetic. Oh look, another stone with quartz in it. And yet I can't help but feel that the quartz stones within these structures serve a purpose beyond that of just looking attractive or being interesting or denoting exclusivity concerning the status of the megalith or its function, or tomb as a temple or archaeoastronomy site, and so on. In Ireland, many of the megaliths seem to be constructed, particularly the orthostats, those are the vertical standing stones that you might get around a cairn or lining the passageway of a chamber, very often seem to be composed of strong quartz seams. There has to be a reason for this. In a time before electromagnetic pollution, human beings would have had the same kind of sensitivity towards the natural environment that many animals still possess today. We're all aware of famous stories of elephants carrying tourists in Sri Lanka and Thailand who were aware that the tsunami was coming and ran to the mountains, ironically saving the lives of the tourists who were on top of these elephants, as did many other animals who went to high ground, aware that a tsunami was coming long before the ocean had even receded from the beaches. This is a heightened sense of awareness within the natural world, beyond the modality of the five sense experience, which allows animals to still monitor alterations and shifts within the electromagnetic environment around them in a way that human beings have forgotten or has been masked over or covered by things such as electromagnetic pollution. In a time long before the development of electronics and the development of industry as a whole, our ancient ancestors may well have had this same ability available to them, and may have been able to sense the electromagnetic charges within white quartz, which is found in the properties of that stone. When white quartz, or quartz as a whole, is put under pressure, it creates an electric charge. We also are aware of the quartz crystal radio, and yet we have all these megaliths covered in quartz. And it often seems quite specific. Sometimes the quartz seams look like they're deliberately picked to almost tune in a frequency. You have the Bohea stone in Ireland, which is essentially remarkable artwork that looks like radial broadcast patterns atop a giant quartz outcrop. Here you can see at Cabra Wedge Tomb in Sligo how the quartz layer almost looks like the layering you would have on an electronic component. You have two layers of insulation of the limestone with the quartz in the middle. I see this a lot. This is very common. Perhaps our ancient ancestors were aware of a charge that came from these sites. Did they utilize quartz in these ancient monuments simply for the purpose of this charge, or was there another aspect to it, maybe preserving food or affecting the landscape? We know for a fact, thanks to the fantastic work of Philip S. Callahan and his books on the magnetic life of agriculture, that diamagnetic properties are found in the round towers of Ireland, and this is why farmers will move their cattle to islands such as Dervenish Island in Fermanagh in order to graze their cattle on the grass around the round tower, because it has the best yield in terms of the animals producing milk and also in terms of them being healthy. The round towers of Ireland are almost certainly a leftover of a skill or a knowledge base from previous megalithic cultures which knew that quartz had a specific function, perhaps healing, perhaps even beyond agriculture, producing spiritual and heightened senses of experience and consciousness. If you look at this particular stone on the end of Cabra Wedge Tomb, you can see that it has interesting lines of quartz, yet this is just bypassed over by archaeologists and researchers. The significance of this stone is also due to the fact that it faces the winter solstice and is the first stone that directly gets hit by the light of the rising sun on the solstice. It is also the only stone at Cabra Wedge Tomb which produces a reading on my EMF meter as I move the meter across the ridges, which also seem to have been tuned in or attenuated by having been carved to create a slight recess, so the top of the quartz ridge is proud of the flat stone surface behind it, almost like a cascading effect. Did our ancient ancestors place, position and alter these stones almost like tuning in frequencies on a crystal radio? Is this why we're affected in an emotional and psychological way by many of these sites, especially if they have not been altered over the years? Why are these stones carried long distances to make wedge tombs and other structures in certain sites where quartz is rare? The proliferation of quartz within ancient megalithic sites is one of the most understudied and underappreciated aspects concerning ancient monuments, and I believe it's perhaps one of the most important.